Stick with me, I will make you famous. I will take you places to see different faces. I'm Matthew Msingati, the designer and developer. Have you ever wondered how is this information that you are learning from various YouTube coding channels fits in together? Maybe you've been taught MVC, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, maybe also if statement and arrays, but you were asking yourself, how does this all information fit in together? This series is for you. It's called Re-Engineering. This is where I will be taking all the famous apps, YouTube, Google, Twitter, and Instagram, breaking them down into detail, reverse engineering them in such a way that you can see how all this information you've been taught from coding channels fit in together. The first application is going to be YouTube. Why YouTube? Because even right now you are watching YouTube. So I'm going to talk about a platform that you are familiar with. Step number one, I'm going to tell you more about the MVC pattern, how it has been applied. I'm going to talk about extension, why YouTube is being extended without breaking. This is what I mean. You never heard that YouTube has been down for a month because they were busy adding a new feature or they were extending it. So I'm going to discuss in detail how is that being done in terms of how it has been structured and the thinking behind. I will tell you more about the views, how maybe they've been developed, and also the business layer. I will talk about also the database layer. I will teach you about the routing. I will talk about OOAD, object-oriented analysis and design. I will jump into analytics, algorithm, and also SQL. As a bonus, I will talk about the Google family. What do I mean by the Google family? Why what you were searching on Google search ends up appearing on your YouTube. And also, why what you've been searching on YouTube also might end up appearing on your Google search. So this is where I will give you an 360 degrees of how this thing has been achieved, and also what is Google's intention behind all these many applications, your Google Pay, your Google Chrome, your Google Keep, and others. Otherwise, if you are interested in such knowledge and information, stick with me. I will make you famous. See you on the next video. Don't forget to subscribe to keep you updated when I'm releasing all these videos. See you on the next one. Stick with me, I'll make you famous. I'm Matthew Msingati, the designer and developer. In this video, we are going to dissect and reverse engineer YouTube. In order for me to do that very well, I must start from the layers of YouTube, how it has been constructed and designed. I really don't believe if YouTube has been designed in such a way that there is one file sitting somewhere and all the UI elements of YouTube, they are requesting different information from one file, or at least a group of files sitting somewhere in one place. Why? Because this will be a very poor way of doing it. Why do I think that behind YouTube there is MVC? What is MVC? MVC is a design pattern, and this acronym stands for Model View Controllers. This just simply means that behind the application there is a separation of concern. All the things that are concerned about the model, they are sitting under a certain class, a function, or a folder called models. All the things that are concerned about the views, they are sitting on a certain class, a function, or a folder called views. And all the things that are concerned about controlling the application, they are grouped in a separate place. So the model view controller, it's more about the concern. This just means that in your application or in the design of your application, make sure that anything that is a view, that means a user interface, keep it separate from what is a controller. A controller, we might say that it's a business logic. And then also keep it separate from a model. What is a model? A model is also the same as a database layer. So I strongly believe that YouTube also is adopting this pattern Obviously, there are different variation of separation of consent. Maybe you will hear somebody talking about the MVC model and also the different variation. However, in this video, I'm only concerned about the separation of consent. This is where a certain layer does one thing and one thing only. Let me bring this into perspective. When you search on YouTube, obviously there is a search box. Let's say this is where you search all your videos. Let's call this a view. This is where the users interact with it. And then behind the view, there is a controller. There is a controller. And what is a controller? A controller is that class or function that deals with processing the information that comes from the user interface. However, when this controller is processing that information, it's not aware of the views, but it can interact and view the view. And also, this controller is not aware of the database. It doesn't have the information that contains the password and all the other things, and it doesn't connect, but it talks to the model. So it's the model that connects to the database to query information. So I strongly believe that based on how YouTube is scaling and also how accurate it is and also how efficient it is, it must have been developed out of this pattern, the model view controller. So lastly, let me just give you an idea of how might this happen in terms of YouTube. This is me, Matthew, searching how to code here. So it means that I'm interacting with the view. In the back end of YouTube, there are files that are organized in such a way that they are only the views. Why that has been done? You will never find a situation whereby in the same file there is an HTML and also there is PHP, and at the same time there is a PHP code that connects to the database. This has not been done. So when Matthew is searching something here, he's using the view. YouTube view are designed in such a way that inside them there is no controller, there is no logic that deals with controlling. Why they are doing that? Simply because they want to easily replace the view. Now let's go to another advanced topic, which is the solid principle. If we take the S on the solid principle, it stands for single responsibility. It stands for single responsibility. So by applying the MVC principle, you are at least doing two things at once. You are also applying the solid single responsibility principle. This means that this UI is only aware of being the user interface, so that YouTube, when they are changing things, they can just substitute this UI with another UI, because this UI is only a UI. They won't face a situation where they want to change this UI and then you find out that this UI carries some instruction that makes some business logic and also it connects to the database. It won't be substitutable. Also, when I'm done searching here how to code, then there is a file, a class or a function that deals with processing that information efficiently, which is not involving the user interface, so that when this class breaks, we know that YouTube can only come here and make changes here. And also there is a database, that's where now the controller will go to the database and search for all the videos that relates to how to coding, and then that information will be sent back to the controller and then it will be presented to Matthew as somebody who was searching how to code. That is it for this video. Stick with me, I'll make you famous. I'll take you places to see different faces. If you like this video, please do me a favor, subscribe and share. See you on the next one. This is Matthew Msingati, the designer, back with another video tutorial where I'm reverse engineering YouTube. Let's just jump straight into it. This is video number 2. Here I'm talking about extension. Have you ever heard that YouTube has been down for 2 months because they are adding a new feature? Recently, I heard that they were adding a podcast into the feature, and before that, I think they also added some post in the YouTube application or the YouTube environment. How are they achieving this? How is it possible that they keep on adding things without breaking? At least if you've got a year or two or even 6 months in coding, you will know that things go wrong in coding when you start to do changes. So if YouTube keeps on updating and changing things, and they are changing their policies and they are changing rules without 1 month of like dead space or maybe of construction, then it must be that there is a certain way in which me and you can learn from it. And that is buried inside the solid principle. Solid principle. Solid principle is a good programming practice that stands for: number one, single responsibility; number two, open and close; number three, the Liskov substitution; and number 1, 2, 3; and number 4, inversion of control; and number 5, dependency injection. Now, since this is number 2, let's just jump to number 2. Number 2 stands for open and close principle. What does this mean? This looks like it's contradiction. You open something and then you close it. What does this actually mean? It means that in your code or in YouTube code, when these programmers and the engineers are coding, they are coding in such a way that their program, let me just write a diagram, their program is open for extension but closed for modification. So this means that if YouTube decides that, let's say for some reason they want to be like Facebook, they are introducing statuses. This means that they are not going to get into the existing code and modify it. No, but they will just come up with a module called statuses. Since this place has been open for extension, this status is now it's an extension to the YouTube platform. So what they will do, they will take this status and fit it in here. Because while they were designing, the engineers, while they were busy planning and constructing the overall architecture and how things are going to work well together, they were thinking of making sure that it's opened for extension but closed for modification. Have you ever heard of a fragile code? What is a fragile code? A fragile code is the code that when you are trying to add a certain feature in this place of a code, also this one breaks, and also this one breaks, and also this one breaks. I have been a victim of this. As a result, I have lost some important client that would have made a very big difference in my life, and I don't want that to happen to you. So I wish you can also go and research about these things so that you can see how they can make your life easier. That is how YouTube is being able to keep on extending without a month of shutdown. You will never heard an update that say that YouTube is busy updating so you cannot search for a month. That has never happened. It's simply because the engineers at YouTube and the programmers and the team, the technical team behind, they are thinking of the open close principle. All what they do, they make sure that their system is open for extension but closed for modification. So this means that if you can think this way, you can write an extensible code. So that is it for this video. I'm Matthew Msingati, the designer and developer. See you on the next one. Please do me a favor. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you on the next one. Stick with me, I'll make you famous. I'll take you places to see different faces. I'm Matthew Msingati, the designer and developer. This is a series of videos around YouTube re-engineering or reverse engineering. We are on video number 3. We are talking about views. The one thing that I want you to know about YouTube views is that they are dumb. Yes, they are dumb. views. What are dumb views? Dumb views are views that are only concentrating on being views, not something else. These views are not trying to be smart or intelligent. If I might use a term that you might understand or be familiar with, they are not only dumb, they are selfish views. Meaning that these views, they don't lend a hand. They don't help the other parts of the layers or the architecture, which is the controller. This is the controller. So these views, they don't assist the controller by taking a certain portion of the instructions that are here and involve that here. Why these views are going to be dumb and selfish? It's simply because they want to be self-aware. They want to feel themselves. They want to be only themselves. They don't want to be a watered down version of a controller or a watered down version of the model. Let's just take this to real life. If somebody has got character, if somebody has got unique attribute, if somebody have some certain things that you can depend upon, you know that if you ask Matthew to do a certain task, he will complete it. He's got an iron will. He will make sure that he completes it. Even in the work environment, the managers and the HR team, they are looking for those people that you can depend upon. So that's what these views are trying to do. They are trying to make sure that the developers, they can depend upon. Remember, YouTube, it's a very big platform, and I'm assuming it's not being maintained by a team of 2 or 3 or even 10 software developers or engineer or front-end developers. There is a lot in that team, people who are maintaining. So if one developer can come up with a view that is not dumb, a view that is smart, a view that is responsible for being a view, and also it pulls data from the database, and also it makes some decisions and logic about who is logged in and who is searching coding and who is searching what. Now when we want to replace this view with another view, as you know that YouTube is one of those platforms that keeps on updating and keeps on changing things. YouTube is different from the time it was bought or it was acquired by Google. It has been evolving, it has been changing. They are changing this, they are changing that. However, that's not wrong because they are responding to the market's ever-ending need. So it means that if this view can be smart and it can do a lot of things, at some point it's trying to assist the controller taking some of the chunks of the code and put it here. That means this view cannot be substitutable. It cannot be easily replaceable. That will mean that YouTube might fail to adapt to these changes. It might fail to compete. It will remain stale because now they are going to take time to replace this view, simply because when they are replacing this view has got a piece of information that does things that is not supposed to be doing. Now let's talk principles and design pattern. This view, when it's a dumb view and it's selfish, it conforms to the single responsibility principle. From what? From solid principle. Single responsibility, to only do one thing and do it very well, to be the master of one thing instead of being the jack of all trade. So this helps YouTube team to easily maintain and swap the views. So YouTube views are dumb and they are selfish. Point number 2, YouTube views, they stick to rules of engagement. What are rules of engagement? These views, they are not just views, because remember, they are not just the stand-alone. These views will communicate with the controller. So they need to conform to the rules of engagement. They must have a way of communicating with the controller so that they can receive information. As you might know a thing or two about PHP, one of the things that are being talked about PHP, of one of its advantages, it's for creating dynamic website. So these views, they must stick to certain rules of engagement so that they can be dynamic. Information must be fed into these views so that things can change. So it will mean that as much as they are views, but they must stick to contracts. What might be a contract in a real coding sense? This is just normal HTML. And in this HTML, certain things must change. Maybe the list of videos that are being shown, and also at some point the username here, the user might change. It might be Matthew, it might be John, it might be so and so. So meaning that this view must be able to receive, it must have an entrance, an entry point where it will receive this information. Do you see that now it's starting to conform to the rules of engagement? It must have an entry point so that the controller can pass some certain information to it. Then it will take this information, let's say it's an array, then it will take this information and display information here on that array, break down the second index of an array and display a list of videos and whatsoever. So YouTube views, they stick to the rules of engagement. They are not just closed views. As much as they are dumb, as much as they are selfish, but they are saying that, look, I'm willing to cooperate with the controllers, but I cannot take what the controller does and fit it here. So let's say tomorrow we have a different view, a different layout of the HTML. How is it gonna be added? As long as that view sticks to the rules of engagement. This is view number 2. As long as this view stick to the rules of engagement, then that means this controller can just communicate to this view without being aware of it's communicating to a different view, without even this view being aware of it's being fed by a controller or a different controller. This is Matthew Msingati, the designer and developer. This is a series of videos where I'm reverse engineering YouTube. If you like this type of content, please do me a favor and subscribe so that when I'm releasing video number 4, where I'm talking about business layer. Now I'm done with the view. I'm going to talk with the business layer next. See you on the next one. Stick with me, I'll make you famous. Stick with me, I'll make you famous. I'll take you places to see different faces. I'm Matthew Msingati, the designer and developer. This is a series where I'm reverse engineering YouTube. Now we are in the business logic. This talks to the MVC pattern. The MVC pattern, the C being the controller, the V being the view, and the M being the model. So if we are talking about the controller, we can just take this part of the MVC module, and also it acts as a business logic in the layered architecture. So in terms of YouTube, what is actually happening in the business layer? In a section of the whole entire application where the logic is being done, where certain decisions are being done. Number 1, this layer has to stick to the rules of engagement, just like layer number 1. It will mean that this layer has been designed in such a way that it communicates very well with the user interface, which is the views, and also if this is a controller, and also the model. So if this is a model, a part that connects to the database, this controller or the business logic must conform to the rules of engagement, because it's interested in receiving information from the database about a certain list of videos, about things that it can suggest to the view. Based on the interest of the viewer, it's supposed to suggest some things. How is it going to do that? It must connect to the database, so meaning that it must stick to the certain rules of engagement, so that the database layer, the model, can push information to it. It can give it a list of videos, paths, and images as thumbnails, so that it can take all those and fit those into the view. So meaning that the first thing that we must notice about the business logic of the YouTube application is that it must stick to the rules of engagement, because it's more like an intermediary. It's standing between two layers, the database layer and the view. So by sticking to the rules of engagement, it means that also it has to be selfish. That's why if it's selfish, then it will stick to the single responsibility principle of the solid principle. So it will stick to this. That means it's going to be a solid platform. It's going to be a solid class or a solid layer. So this means that it must stick to the rules of engagement. There is a certain way in which it connects or it communicates with the layers, and there is a certain way in which it communicates to the database. How is it going to send information, and how is it going to receive it? How is it going to send information, and how is it going to receive it? And point number 2, when we talk of solid principle, this O stands for open, close. Sorry for my bad writing. It stands for open, close. This looks like a contradiction. How can something be open and close at the same time? When we talk of the solid principle, this is the layer that has to nail the open close principle. The open close principle states that a class, a function, or whatever needs to be closed for modification, but only open for extension. So if YouTube wants to add a new feature, they can just plug in it here. Let's say now they want to involve chats, maybe they want to imitate WhatsApp. So meaning that through this open gap, they are able to extend the YouTube platform. But as you can see, this is closed for modification. If you want to change the entire code, the entire controller, you can't go into the module in this class and just change it, because this class has been designed in such a way that it has got a piece of a gap where it can add an extension, more or less like WordPress and the plugins. So meaning that this layer, the business logic, is the one that relies heavily on the open close principle. It must be closed for modification but open for extension. That's why it's easier for YouTube to keep on changing. Today you hear that the algorithm is saying this, tomorrow they have removed that, and then tomorrow the interface looks like this, and then the other day the interface looks like that. So this is the layer that heavily relies on O of the solid principle. So the open close. And then going to the next thing, this layer is the one that heavily relies on being modular. And this is a setup for my last point, which is point number 4. When we are talking of something that is modular, we are talking of something that has been broken down into modules, into chunks. Maybe when you are at school or university, you will hear that there are course modules, maybe introduction to object-oriented programming, advanced concept, and also class diagram and UML. Those are, let's say, the modules. So meaning that this class is the one that is modular, meaning that as a business logic, it consists of module. It relies heavily on modules, meaning that it's sticking to a good programming practice of being loosely coupled. It's not spaghetti. It's not one thing that consists of a lot of things, whereby the YouTube engineers and programmers, when they want to know how can we add a new subscriber feature, or how are we going to upgrade, because now maybe it's 2052 and things are changing, and then you find out that the new programmer needs to take like 2 months or 2 years trying to find out how this code was written. But if it's in modules, we know that this module deals with subscribing. This module is the algorithm. This module is about suggestion, how the videos are being suggested to certain people. This module is about registering new users and whatever. So this layer, the business layer, heavily relies on, it must be modular. It cannot be tightly coupled, because if it's tightly coupled, then YouTube will never scale or move at a fast pace that it is moving right now. And my last point is that I am convinced that YouTube is object oriented. It's object oriented programming, because with OOP, these things that we are talking about, the solid principle and also the design pattern, they are possible. But without object-oriented programming, they are not possible. And design pattern and the solid principles and the solid principle, they are the foundation of all these big platforms that we are using. All these big platforms that we are using, your Google, your Twitter, your whatever, your Instagram and your Twitter, in the base of them, they are object oriented, so that all these things, they can act like independent objects that communicate with each other. Why is that going to be done? Imagine, let's say YouTube has got, like, this is just a wild guess, I have never worked for YouTube and I've never been there, but let's just say that they have got like 125 programmers. How do these people know what piece of code to work on? If they are only told that you, team of 5, you are going to be responsible for the subscriber object. Here is the UML diagram, or here is the class diagram for the YouTube channel. I will just pause the video. I'm hearing a disturbance. Okay, I'm back again. Let's continue. Now, how are these people are going to share the information? Then they can say a team of 5, this team can work on the subscriber object. Here is the UML diagram for it that has been drawn by the designing team or the architectures of the YouTube platform or the YouTube application. And then they will look at the class and they will look at the objects that have been designed. Okay, this subscriber object, it interacts with the registration object, it interacts with the login object. So instead of us dealing with all those things, we can only deal with this object and do it very well. Once we are done with that, we just send the code to whatever who was responsible for supervisor or a tech lead. I don't know the terms of the software development industry. If you know those terms, you can help me and shoot a comment below. Where are the programmers reporting to? Maybe to a tech lead, I don't know. So they will just take the code, maybe commit it on GitHub, whatever they are doing. But the essence of this is that they can work on a certain piece of code. So we can have YouTube now having all these classes, let's say thousands and thousands of classes that work together, including subscribers, including features that are going to be added, including suggestion, including YouTube analytics, including best performing videos, as you can see, as objects. And then there is the mastermind team that is responsible for how these objects are interacting with each other. I'm Matthew Msingati, the designer and developer. Stick with me, I will make you famous. If you feel like this video has added value into your overall understanding of the YouTube platform and object-oriented programming, please do me a favor. Click that subscribe button. Thank you so much. See you on the next one. I will make you famous. This is Matthew back again with another video tutorial. This is a series of YouTube re-engineering. So what I'm doing here, I'm taking YouTube and dissecting it into pieces that even an ordinary or a 3-year-old guy can understand. So what am I hoping to achieve? I want to take all the information that we have learned from various YouTube coding channel and put it into perspective, or put it together so that you can see how are these big platforms they are being created. Okay, let's jump straight to it. Now we are on video number 5. If you are still new in this channel or in this video, this is a series. There are other videos that are explaining in detail. So this is part number 5. Let's talk about the database layer. How does this fit into the whole puzzle? Let's talk about the MVC. You will always see this popping up in the videos. I'm trying to drill it to you that this pattern is very important. So you must start designing your application following this pattern. Separation of concern. The other person must not be aware of what the other person is saying, and the other person must not be aware of the other person is saying, because you know that as human being, as soon as we get that wrong, that's where we start to gossip, talk about this guy to this guy, or talk about this woman and this lady the manager said to you, and you are not performing well, and then what will happen? There will be a fight, conflict will develop in the work environment. Now let's jump straight into it. In terms of the database layer, I'm going to talk about the layer itself, number one, but I'm not going to talk about a lot on the layer. I think there is something that is more interesting that we need to get into, and number two, that is the database itself. So there's a difference between the database itself and the database layer. Represent it like a class in the UML, the database layer, because the database layer, it communicates with the database itself. So let's just jump straight into it, into the database layer. So in terms of the MVC, the database layer takes the M part, which is the model. This is the layer that, number one, needs to stick to the rules of engagement, as all other layers do. The view does that, the controller does that, but also this one needs to conform to the rules of engagement. Okay, so meaning that this layer must be able to communicate with the controller. So the controller will send a request, and this layer must respond. So number one, in the YouTube system, the model part of it, it must engage to the rules of engagement. It must have some certain rules where it can communicate with the controller. Why there are these rules of engagement? Why it looks like this whole system or YouTube architecture is contractual based. I'm not sure if that word exists in the English vocabulary, but I'm trying to say why it looks like there are contracts here. It's like we're attending a court case. You must be very strict on what you are saying, because it can be used against you in the court of law. That's what is going on. So these guys, these layers, need to conform to the rules of engagement. The reason is, maybe for some reason, YouTube decide to change the database into a different one. Now the platform is becoming bigger. Maybe the guys who invented YouTube or created YouTube before, they were just using whatever database, MySQL, or whatever database management system that they were using. And now YouTube decide, as it grows, it's hitting like million users and thousands of subscribers and whatever. Now they decided that, look, this database is no longer working, we must change it. So this means that if these two guys, they have got a contract of communication, it means that we can substitute this guy without this guy being aware of it. What does aware mean in the programming term? It means that it won't break. If you've been coding at least for 2 months, you will know that chances are you have written a spaghetti code and a fragile code. Once you change something in the user interface, all of a sudden there is an error in the business logic, there is an error in a certain module that has got nothing to do with this module. But because of your code, it's spaghetti. When you change this, this is being affected, and this affects the time for updating or for sticking into the current changes. Or the client will ask you, can you please, developer, change this? And then you have to explain that it's not that easy, and the client won't understand, because they will ask you, how is it not easy but you have been writing your own code? So this is where I come to say that a developer can also get lost into his own thinking if he doesn't use this principle. Back to YouTube. Okay, so number one, this layer, the database layer, stick to the rules of engagement. And secondly, in terms of the layer itself, let's go back to the design principle. Also, as you know that I have been mentioning this principle, please forgive me my writing, just take what I'm saying. So as we've been talking about this series, as we started, we are talking about the design principles, mentioning design patterns. Design pattern. There is a design pattern called singleton. In the YouTube system, there must be a singleton. What is a singleton? A singleton is a class that can only be instantiated once. This layer, the database layer, it must be a singleton. What do I mean by that? This means that the YouTube team, obviously, they must have decided to have only one class, which is, let's say, the database layer. And this class is a singleton, meaning that there could be only one instance of this class. And this class, remember, it connects to the database itself. It communicates with the database. This is the class, this is the layer, and it connects to the database. So whenever Matthew comes or John comes and search how to code this and this, how to do a PHP form, this means that in all those requests, there is only one instance of that class that connects to the database. What if maybe there might be multiple connection or multiple classes that connect to the database? It will mean that if Matthew come and search something, we have to create a new instance of a database, or a new instance of this class and connect to the database. The other person comes, a new instance, connect to the database. And remember, connecting to the database is expensive. It costs time, some server resources. So if now we've got billions of requests and all those billions, they are constructing new classes. When somebody asks for something, a new class is being created, then it will mean that the system will crash. And as you know that YouTube's platform, it's one of the very strong platform, because these guys keeps on making changes, but the system doesn't really show signs of breaking. At least I'm not aware of. I've only joined YouTube as a creator, I think 2 years back, and also I haven't been using YouTube for like a very long time, you know. Okay, now let's jump straight to the point. So meaning that this layer must be a singleton. It must make use of the design pattern called a singleton. What is a singleton? A singleton allows only one instance of a class, which is the database layer. Whatever request that you are sending, the singleton needs to ask itself, do I have this class instantiated already? If the answer is true, that will mean I will return the instance so that you can use that connection into querying whatever you want from the database and send it back to Matthew as somebody who wants to learn on how to code. What if John in United States is also requesting on how to do a PHP PDO? The class needs to ask itself, do I have an instance of it? Yes. Then send that instance. So that means that the singleton, this layer, can only connect once to the database. And then from then, it will use that one connection for all the billion users that are requesting, or billions and quadrillion. I'm not sure. I'm not good with numbers. I don't know what's the biggest number after a billion. If you know that, please shoot the comment below. So that is the singleton principle, and it is a design principle. Now we are done with the layer. Let's just jump straight into the database itself. We are here now. Here we are talking about a class that connects to the database. Now we are here in the database. The one thing that I want to talk about in the database, which I might think you might not be familiar with, or it might be new to you, is normalization. Let me just try to write it. I'm very lazy in writing. The database layer, the database itself, the YouTube database, has been normalized. What is normalization? Okay, let's say we were creating a YouTube database. Okay, let's represent it in terms of a table and table rows and columns. Okay, obviously the database looks like something like this. There is a user, there is a user ID, there is the username, the name of the channel, and so forth. And in the columns, there is information about that. This is Matthew. He's got a channel called Coded Design. This is a link to his channel, and this is the number of videos that he has. I hope you get the point. This is the database. But let me ask you, how far are we going to keep on extending this table in order to adding Matthew's information? Let's see how far. He's got a channel called Coded Design. He has got 7 subscribers. We must put it here. Also, he's got an AdSense account, so that when he reach whatever number of YouTube channels and subscribers, we can pay him. He's got also a Gmail account, which is this, and also he's got this playlist, and also he's got this, and also he's got that. As you can see that we are going to have a very large table, which is going to be inconsistent, because when Matthew is starting to open a YouTube channel, he doesn't have subscribers, he doesn't have a playlist, he doesn't have, so all these values are none. So as you can see that we are going to have some inconsistencies. There is information here, he doesn't have this one, he has this one, he doesn't have this one. Let me just represent that in form of strings. He doesn't have, he doesn't have, he has, he doesn't have, he doesn't have, he has, he doesn't have, and also this is too big and unstructured. Let me introduce you to the normal form. When database, let me just write this in a new paper. Sorry for that delay. When these database are being created, this is how they are being created. This is, let me be lazy. This is normalization. All that information about Matthew, it will be written here. The username, the playlist, the AdSense account, the Gmail account, the subscribers, whatever, the YouTube analytics, algorithm, everything, it will be taken here. But now this information will be grouped according to, I can say, relevancy. Sorry about that. The YouTube will be, these tables will be grouped according to relevancy. This means that we will take all the information, Matthew's information that relates to playlist. We are going to have another table. We are breaking this table down into its first normal form. We are going to have a table called playlist. Playlist will only have a list of videos that he has that belong to that playlist. Let's say this playlist is Conceptual OOP, a playlist that I have in my YouTube channel. Please, you can go and check it. It's for beginners. So we have a Conceptual PHP. Conceptual PHP consists of videos. Which are those videos? Introduction to OOP, Object-Oriented, and Classes. So now we've just have got a simple table that is a part of this table. And then from then, let's just make another example. Now we've got a table called users. In this table called users, we only have Matthew's name, his own Gmail account, and also his own AdSense account, the password, and whatever. The username and the password. As you can see that now in this table, we are having just simple and manageable information. So meaning that in this table, we will only leave the information that relates to this table. Now, you won't have a situation whereby we said we're having a large table. He has got the AdSense account. He doesn't have the AdSense account. He has it. He doesn't have, he has. So it will mean that all the information, all the zeros that doesn't have because of it's a playlist information, we will take all of that and put it inside playlist, leaving this without zeros. And then we find out that we've got also other zeros for the user information. At the moment, he didn't create an AdSense account because he's not eligible for monetization and whatever. We take all those zeros and then we push it in here. And then now we are having a new structure, a well-normalized database, which looks like this. We've got playlist, we've got users, and we've got videos. I'm just going to do only these examples. And then this ends up being a well-normalized database. What if now the controller, or let's say what if now the model, because it's the model that really queries information from the database. Now the model wants to get the username and the password. Instead of going to a very big database that has got some zeros and things, places that are null yet, then it will only communicate with what? With users table, and it will query the username and password for this YouTuber to authenticate if this is the right YouTuber. Then if that is true, it will bounce back that information to the controller, and the controller will talk to the view. What if then we want to know more information about the playlist? At the same time, there will be another query that goes to the playlist to say that playlist for this user ID which is here, I want this playlist, and then for this user ID, then the playlist will have information to say, okay, this is the playlist which is conceptual object oriented programming. This is the information only about the conceptual object oriented programming. Then we will get that information as a playlist for this YouTube account, and then from then, if you want a list of all the videos, then we will get, in these videos we will get a list of all videos. What if we want to query only the videos that this user has liked? Obviously in videos there is a tab here for liked videos. He has got only 2 videos, video number 1 and video number 2, and he has only liked this one and he didn't like this one. So when we are querying here on videos, we can say give us all the videos that he liked, and then we'll only get 1 videos. Obviously this might not be clearer, but I hope you get the point of normalization. Stick with me, I'll make you famous. I'm Metim Singati, the designer and developer. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe. See you on the next one. Stick with me, I'll make you famous. I will take you places to see different faces. This is Matthew Msingati, the designer and developer. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Coded Design, where I teach coding and user interface design. In this video, I'm going to draw a picture of a beautiful lady. And in the process, I'm going to teach you advanced architectural software principle and design. The reason why I'm doing this video is simply because in most coding channel, this is a topic that is not talked about. I don't know for what reason. So I've decided if I'm going to talk about design pattern and also solid principle and also architectural tools and technique, I must make it interesting, and also I must make sure that you understand it by taking something that you know, which is art and drawing, and translate it into software development. Without wasting time, let's just jump straight into it. So I don't know other artists how they do things, but with me, what I do before I draw anything, I first work on the proportion. So to make sure that I keep things proportional, what I do, I always draw a Cartesian plane. So what is a Cartesian plane? In simple terms, it's just a cross. So let's quickly do that. But in doing so, we just need to make sure that the angle of our cross is 90 degrees. How are we going to make sure that we do that? Okay, this is how we can do that. We take this paper and we take our ruler. We are sure that this ruler is 100% straight. So instead of drawing a line that might be like this or a line that might be like this, we can draw a line that is 100% straight by doing what? By aligning the edge of the ruler to the edge of the paper, just like this. You see? Let's just draw this line. Okay, the other thing that we can do, let's just continue with this line to the other side of the paper. So this is my own way of explaining things that are a bit difficult to be explained, things like software architecture and also design pattern. So in using this technique, it's going to be easier for me, first of all, to explain to you how this thing works, and also how studying software architecture can help you to write a better code. And the best way to do that is to do it through drawing. Okay, that is it, guys. This is our Cartesian plane. Well, designers might know this as a grid, because in graphic design software and design program, or also graphic design industry, this comes as a grid. There are more lines going this way, and also there are more lines going this way, and it becomes a grid, but it's the same thing. Now the only thing that we want to do here, we want to draw the lines. So let's just put our ruler here and just mark our lines, our numbers. Let's say from here, 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 and here, 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 here. That's it. Nothing much, nothing complicated. And then we are going to do this also, and then we will be done. And then after this, we are going to jump straight into software development architecture. Okay, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Guys, that is it. Now we have completed the first part of our task, which is to draw a Cartesian plane. Now let's jump straight into software development. How does this relate to software development? Okay, let's just take a new piece of paper. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the design pattern, but not all of them. I'm just going to talk about 2 design patterns and show you how do they relate into the drawing that we have done. Excuse my writing. Okay, the first design pattern that we are going to talk about, it's a single point. It's either point of access, it's a single point of access, or it's a single entrance point. Okay, whatever the term is, but the single point of access or the single entrance point states that in your web application or in your application there must be a single point of entrance. What is a single point of entrance? Just like in any house, that there is no, you never heard that there's a guy who entered the house through the window, or maybe by the whatever, by a certain hole at the back, but you always come through the door. This acts as a single point of entrance, so that there could no person who can just jump into the house or get into the house through the window. So what does that mean? Let's just take this to web application. In web application, you must have an index file, index.php. This is a file that will always be an open door for HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, but particularly let's say JavaScript, because it's JavaScript that is going to make an AJAX call to this script. Okay, so let's just write here JS. So whenever somebody press a button and request something, sorry about that disturbance, whenever somebody makes a request on the UI, and then this JavaScript must always come to knock at this door. This is the single point of entrance, meaning that we are avoiding the situation whereby we've got all these JavaScripts, they are looking for different files from different angles. How will that make our life complicated? This means that if we want to make sure that these JavaScript requests, they conform to certain rules, for instance, let's say they must all be strings. Let's say we want to validate that all the JavaScript requests that are coming here, they must all be strings, let's say. That will be a validation. It will mean that if we've got these files requesting or pulling PHP files from all over the place, it will mean we have to write this validation here, we have to write this validation here, we have to write this validation here. And you know, in coding there is a principle called the try principle. Do not repeat yourself. As soon as you write one thing more than 3 times, then we've got a problem. That means you are violating the try principle. So it means that if we stick to the single point of entrance or the single entrance point, it will mean that we will only write the validation here. JavaScript will knock at our door. We will say, hi, JavaScript, come inside. When JavaScript come inside, we will tell them that this is the rule. As a rule in this house, we always take off our shoes. That means we validate. So all the JavaScript, they must point to this one script. Do you understand that? Yes. Let's just end here for now. Let's just take only this design pattern. I will talk about the other one as we continue. So in this Cartesian plane in drawing acts as a design pattern. Obviously in the final drawing, because I'm going to erase this you're not going to see it, but it serves as a basis or as a foundation. Maybe the reason why most coding or most YouTube coders, they miss this part of coding, it's because you cannot really tell, or you cannot really see. But if you have used one of the most famous social media application, let's say Twitter, you will see that these applications are consistent. They are very exact, they are functional, they are accurate, and they don't break. They've got minimal errors, very minimal errors. The reason is the software design, patterns, and architecture, not coding. So obviously, when you are new into coding, get into YouTube and try to search some coding channel, you will always be taught about coding. We open Visual Studio Code, we type something, we type function, we type arrays and whatever. That's not wrong, but there is the next level. So now in our drawing, we have set up a foundation, and you will see how this foundation is going to help us in drawing a very at least decent drawing of this beautiful lady using only circles. Now let's just jump straight into it. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to mark 9 lines, and then somewhere in between, I think the half of 9, it's the half of 9, 4, 4, it's 8, and then 4.5, that will be the half of 9. Okay, so 4.5 will be in the middle, as you can see. So what we are trying to do here, we are going to quickly write 4 circles. It's not going to be complicated. I'm not going to use my artistic skills. This is not an art class. Okay, so this will be my first line, as you can see, and then also this is going to be 4.5, and then this is going to be my other line. 9 ends here. Okay, as you can see, sorry, I don't see my other line. Okay, here is it. So what we are going to do, we are just going to quickly write a circle, draw a circle. Okay, let's just quickly do that. You don't need to have some artistic skills here, because this is not an art class. But I just want to show you the importance of this Cartesian plane on keeping the proportion of this drawing. And in the final drawing, you are not going to see it because it's going to be deleted. But it has played an important role in keeping the diagram proportional. Very big and important role. As you can see, this is our first circle. Does this look like a beautiful lady? No. Of course, I hope this is clear. Yes, I hope you can see. Okay, now that we have done that, 4.5 and 4.5. So now that we have done that, what we are going to do, we are going to draw the next circle. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to draw all these 4 circles without explaining too much, and then we will take it from there. So this is going to be the first circle, this is the second circle. Let's just this is the first circle. Okay, and then let's just write the third circle here. Okay, this is going to be the first circle, second circle, and the third circle. Okay, make sure, note this. Okay, just a moment, I'm a bit lost somewhere here in my own techniques. Okay, this is the first circle and the second circle. Okay, this is the first circle and the second circle. Okay, same thing here. This is the first circle, second circle, first circle, second circle. Okay, now I'm just going to draw the first circle, sorry, the second circle. Second circle, here is our second circle. Second circle. So this Cartesian plane is very important on making sure that it keeps the proportion of our drawing. That's what the design patterns are doing in your application. They make sure that they keep the proportion so that the application can be easy to maintain and also it can be easier to scale. The reason why we the reason why we failed as coders on coming up with applications that are scalable, application that can be converted to product, it's simply because our application, they are just lines of code, meaning that they are functional. Yes, of course, many coders, they can write functional applications or functional code, but now ask him to change something, and then he will tell you that I need 2 months to change whatever that I want to change. I hope this is clear to you. As you can see that if you hear some noise, this is just my dog next to me. Okay, as you can see that this is just 1, 2, 3. Now we only need the last line. However, don't mind what we are going to do. We are going to put the last line together. What I'm going to do now, I'm just going to pause the video. I'm just going to make sure that I write these lines clearly as they are without making them perfect. I don't want to waste your time. Okay, I'm back again. What I've decided to do, number one, I have removed our Cartesian plane, our cross, and the second thing, I've just decided to draw the fourth line. As you can see, what we have here is just 4 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's it. At this stage, can you tell what this is, or is this close to a diagram or a drawing of a beautiful lady? Far from it. That's the problem that we have in the programming, coding, or even software development industry in general, because these techniques and design pattern and principle, they don't appeal to functionality. When you are starting planning your code, you are trying to adapt to good programming practices and software architecture, things like MVC pattern. When you are trying to understand those things, they are too far from code. So if you can find a channel, instead of teaching you arrays, function, variables, and CSS, it talks to you about MVC, it talks to you about design pattern, it talks to you about solid principle, and it talks to you about dry principle. What are you going to do? You always move away from that channel to another channel because it doesn't really show interesting things. That's the problem. Everything that will matter in life doesn't seem interesting, but it's very important. As you can see in this drawing, those lines, you cannot really see the impact of them. And also when you look at this drawing, you cannot tell what it is. That's the importance of design patterns. So now let's jump straight to another part of the design pattern. We will come back to the drawing, and now when we come back, we will draw something that is realistic, or whatever that we're going to add. You will start to see now the picture of the beautiful lady will start to show there. Let's come back to the design patterns. Okay, in software development, more especially object-oriented programming, when you start working on your application, you start to instantiate object. When you are creating a new object, let's say I'm saying new item in object-oriented programming, this part is called instantiation. So you will realize that when you are creating an instance of an object, you are creating a new class, let's say, you will find out that the class that you are creating, the class item, requires some dependencies, or there are some things that it depends on. In order for it to work, it depends on something. Let's just make a practical example. Whenever you create an item of invoice, this is an item of invoice, and you are saying new invoice, and then this is new invoice. Okay, let me just make this bracket very big because I'm going to fit a lot of things here. When you are creating an invoice, the actual invoice needs to have a tax. So meaning that, are you going to calculate a tax in this class of invoice, or you are going to have another class which is called tax that you can always put in here, or you will always inject? And remember, dependency injection is another design principle. So if we are injecting things here, that means we are sticking to the design principle. So what we are going to do, we are going to inject a text object here. It will calculate the text for us. Why must not we take this text object and put it inside this class in the scope of this class. Number one, we won't be sticking to the solid principle. It will mean that we are having a class invoice that also calculates text. That means it's creating some sort of a functionality that really doesn't relate directly to it. What if the text changes? Do you see that we are going to come to a class invoice and modify it, only modifying it for something that it cares less about, which is text? So to become smarter, we are going to inject this text class, because text and invoice are two different things. I think the difference is in the word. It's invoice, it's text. So these are two different things. So we are going to inject text so that this class invoice can use a text. Then you will find out that then again, this invoice, it needs a certain class that creates a PDF, because once this class is done, it must render a PDF. So we can't just, in this thousand lines of a invoice class, we add another thousand lines of a module that creates a PDF. That means we are not sticking to the solid principle, single responsibility. So we need to inject, let's say, the PDF generator. So then in object-oriented programming, as you get into creating an application, or when you try to create an application, as Uncle Bob once said, that you will kind of see that this whole application thing now, it's starting to become dependency management. Meaning that this class, before you instantiate it, it will need some dependencies. These are dependencies. These are things that it depends on, but it is not the things. Meaning that an invoice is an invoice. It uses a text class, it uses a PDF class, but it is not a text, it is not a PDF. It can function without these things. Meaning that even if you can substitute another text class, as long as it remains a text class, is going to use it. Even if you substitute another PDF creator, maybe now you've decided to change your PDF creator to a different one, as long as it's a PDF creator, it will use it. And then you will find out that now you've got a lot of dependencies that you need to manage. Let me just draw a map of what I'm saying. Now you need to know that before you create an invoice class, it will need a text class, it will need a PDF class, let's say it will need, let's say, a document class, or let's say itself, it inherits from a document class, because it is a document, it is a business document, just like an invoice and just like a quotation, because those are business documents. So you will find out that you've got all these dependencies that you have to deal with. So if you are not using object-oriented programming good practices and pattern, you will get lost in this dependency management thing, because this is how you will normally do it, and it's going to stress you and it's going to be difficult to maintain. You are going to say new item because you are not aware of the dependency injection principle. You are going to say new item, and then in this text you are going to say new text, and you realize that when you are newing up, when you are instantiating text needs another dependency, then because it needs another thing to work on. Let's say rates, there is a class called rates that this class text uses. And then when you come to the PDF generator and then you say comma, you are also passing a new PDF, and find out the PDF maybe works with a certain writing engine. Then we are going to say new writing engine, and then this writing engine, obviously it will need a certain stream or whatever technology that it will need. Let's say it's a document generator, and then you say new DG. Just by creating one invoice, now you are starting to write a very long line of code where you are newing up an invoice, and then that invoice takes a dependency which is a text. That text takes another new, and that PDF takes another new, and find that out you are writing this line of code. Now let us use a design pattern called the factory. And what the factory does, it solves this problem. What you are going to do, you are going to create a class which you are going to call it a factory. In my case, I always call it dependency injection container. That's what I call it. I don't usually call it a factory, but the factory pattern works the same. It doesn't tell you how you must write your classes, but as long as it's going to be a factory. So for now, let's call it a factory. This is a factory. What happens in a factory? A factory receives raw materials and it manufactures products on those raw materials. The same thing is done by this class factory. What it will do, it will have a method called get invoice. It's going to be a static method, get invoice. Then when you are running this method, you will find out that this method, what it will do, it will return invoice. Okay, this method will return invoice. However, before you create an invoice, this invoice thing will need a text class being created. So what will happen is, inside the get text invoice, we will create a new invoice which will need a text. So instead of this invoice newing up the text, it will just receive it as a parameter, or it will just get text. Get text is a function that is inside the factory that is responsible for generating a text. So let's say we've got get text here, that will only return a text. And then from then going forward, this invoice also uses get PDF. I think my space is small here, but please stick to what I'm saying. So this invoice, now instead of saying new, it will just ask for get PDF, and then inside this class factory there is a function called get PDF that is responsible for creating a PDF and returning it. So let me just try to write things clearer without making things a little bit unclear. So in the factory, we are going to have an invoice, which is, it's a get invoice method. This get invoice will return the invoice in the end. It will return invoice, but before it returns invoice, it needs a text. It is not going to say new text, it's not going to instantiate a text, but it's just going to call a method called get text. That method will provide a text for it, a text class for it. Then it will just use, let me just GT, it will use get text, it will use get PDF. And then in the same class, there will be a method called get PDF that is responsible for creating a new PDF. If this new get text, if this new get text needs a rate class, then we will have another method called get rate where it will create a new rate. I hope now you get how things are being done in the factory. However, when we talk of the client code, which is where we are going to use this factory, it knows nothing about this complicated mess of production happening in the factory. But the only thing that you are going to do in your client code, you will just always call or always use this factory. For instance, let me just write a simple code that is not accurate, but it will communicate the idea. Now let's say where we were creating a new invoice. Let's say now we want to create a new invoice. Before we do that, we are going to say in PHP a variable called factory is equal to new factory. So inside this variable factory, we've got this whole factory now. We've just taken the whole factory and we have put it inside this variable factory. So when we are saying new invoice, now we are creating a new, okay, now instead of instantiating, remember the reason why we've got a factory, we are avoiding into the client code newing things. So it will mean that if I've got invoice here, variable invoice, INV, What I'm going to do, I'm just going to say it is equal to factory, which is factory, and I will call for that static method, which is get invoice, because the factory can manufacture the invoice for me. Do you see how simple this thing is as compared to what we did before? New invoice, and then in bracket new text, and then the text need another dependency, which is new rate, and then when we are done that, we say new PDF generator, and the PDF generator needs a new thing. So now we just say invoice is equal to, and then we just say get invoice from the factory. The factory will do all the complicated stuff, and then when it's done with all that, it will just return the invoice class ready to be used. This is design pattern. This is more of the architectural side of things. This principle will make your life easier. So imagine if you were writing an application for a client and you were doing it, let's say, the wrong way or the difficult way, where you've got new. Meaning that when another designer comes in to check your code, it's going to be very complicated. But if you use design pattern, remember, design pattern are more like universal standard. A guy from South Africa and a guy from Baghdad, or the guy from Ghana, they know the same thing. If you know, you know. So it will mean that you will understand that, oh, this is a factory, because I can see that this class, even if the name is not a factory, as I've told you that in my coding, I call these dependency injection containers. That's what I call it. So this means it's a container. It contains all the dependency injection. So whatever you call it, but the other person can also know. Most coding channel, they just get into coding and typing function without talking about this. Now, do you see how this factory has made our life easier? Now, allow me to go back to the drawing. Back to the art. This is what that Cartesian plane was doing for us. It was setting the rules for what we are going to do. Now let's just finish and perfect the picture of our beautiful lady. How are we going to do that? Let's continue. Now what we want to do, I'm going to draw a shape here that I think it will make this picture very clear, and I'm going to draw it here. Okay, let me draw it here. Okay, it's not that proper, but it will solve the problem. Now I think now at least you are supposed to have a clue as to where is the nose and where is the mouth and where is the other thing. But let me just continue. I'm hoping that now you are starting to get the idea. Let me just continue. In case you didn't get it, now I'm hoping you will get it. I'm hoping now it's going to be clear. The picture of our beautiful lady, it's going to be clear. Now you can tell where is the long beautiful hair and the beautiful face and the beautiful nose. You want to tell me even now you don't have a clue, but don't mind, I do understand where you're coming from. Let me add another clue. And remember, the clues that we are adding them on top of a very solid structure. So we are not just ending randomly the clues, we are adding the clues on the very solid structure. And also important to note the distance between the circles. Remember, we said the Cartesian plane, which was the cross, it's the design patterns. Excuse my bad writing. The distance between the cross, the one that maintains the proportion, let's say the proportion of the design, it's being maintained by solid principle. In this video, I'm not going to discuss in details about the solid principle. I'm just going to name them for you, and that will be it. So let's just continue and finish the drawing to get things going. Okay, now I'm going to draw my last object that is going to tell you how does my beautiful lady looks, or exactly what's going on. This is the last thing that I'm hoping it's supposed to complete the picture of the beautiful lady that I have promised to draw for you. Okay, let me just draw another organ. Maybe these are her ears, and this is the mouth. This is the mouth. Okay, let me make it clear so that you can see. Do you get it? If you still don't get it, let me just draw one small thing. Maybe it might or it might not give you an idea. Still not clear. As you can see, this is a can in a top view. So that's what I was drawing here. This is a can in a top view. Let me just quickly make this part black so that you can have an idea. So this is a top view of a can. Okay, this is a top view of a can. So usually this hole, when the can is empty, even if it has got something, let's assume that it has got a Coke. There is a Coke inside. I hope now you get the idea. So what has helped us in terms of the structure, it's the design pattern, and the distance between these circles. It's the solid principle. What are solid principle? Solid principle is an acronym that stands for single responsibility, which is the S, and the O stands for open close principle, and the L stands for Liskov substitution, and the I stands for interface segregation, and the D stands for dependency inversion. So interface segregation and dependency inversion, I can explain those in detail in the next video. Now let's finalize things and show you how does coding feature in this whole puzzle. Now let's start to code. Remember, we've started with the design pattern, and I've told you what design pattern do, and these are the solid principle. I will tell you what solid principles do. They are responsible for the distance between these lines, maintaining the proportion. Now let's start to code. Coding is shading. So when you are doing your own shading, you are just bringing life into your drawing. Obviously, my shading is not going to be that perfect because this is a video tutorial and this is not an art class. I want you to get an idea of what's going on here. Okay. First of all, this might have been a mistake. This double line was not supposed to be here. It was supposed to be here. Let's just quickly do a rough sketch to fix that one. It's my mistake. Maybe I was in a hurry, but I hope you got the idea of what was going on in this diagram. As you can see that even if we have made the mistake, but that doesn't take much away from our drawing. That doesn't take much from our drawing. It takes, but it didn't take much. Okay, so meaning that this one is supposed to be a single line. Let's see if I can erase. Okay, it's going to take some time. Now let's just go to the shading, which is this is the coding. Okay, now what we are going to do, we are just going to draw lines here, something like this. We are just going to draw lines here, and we are hoping that these lines will create a perspective, meaning that the perspective is they must make that part of a can that looks like it's slanting like this. It's not a flat surface. This creates an illusion that this surface or this area, it's slanting like this instead of being straight. So that's the illusion that we are creating. That's why we are creating these lines in a more at an angle. than just creating them straight. As you can see now, I'm hoping that you are starting to see that this is the picture of a can. This part now in our drawing, it's coding. Do you see where coding lies? Obviously, by the looks of things, it's the coding that gives this whole drawing or structure a shape or a look and feel. It's coding. I don't also dispute that, because without coding we cannot really have the actual functioning application. But as YouTube coders and developers and whatever we call ourselves, we need to also know that there are some things or higher level tools that can help us in order to bring our code into meaningful and usable products. I hope you see what this illusion thing is doing. So as you can see now, this is starting to be more like a realistic. Now let's add one layer of code and we are done. Then you've got the complete picture. Now we are doing also the shading. So this is the body of the can. So what we can do, we can just apply some small shading. Obviously it's not 100%, it's not perfect, but this is what coding does. This is what coding does to your own application. So when the application is being built, all the things, all the structure, all the frame and the engineering or whatever, or the architecture is being done by other guys. They are responsible for making decision as to how these class are going to interact and work with one another. That is done by other people. And then us as coders, we are called later in the, I'm not sure, in the development phase, to say that do it, not necessarily do it this way, but build it from this concept, and this is how it's supposed to function. And then we come and then we code, and then you'll find out that when we are kicked out of those coding job, we can't come up with our own product. The reason is we were occupying a very small piece of the puzzle, even though us, we thought that we were the main guys, but we were not the guys who were. So as you can see now, our diagram is starting to take form. Now lastly, let me just add some sort of a perspective of the sun. Obviously this one is not going to be that 100% perfect, but after I'm done with this, you will have an illusion of the sun was on the left or the sun was on the right or something like that. I'm just going to draw random shadows, but they will give you an idea of where the sun is coming from. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to make this part a little bit darker. This part, which is the left part, this side is going to be a bit dark. So I'm just going to draw some dark shadows. And remember, this is not some sort of a well thought of thing, but I'm just throwing random shades. That's what I do. That's what I'm doing. The people who know how to draw them, maybe they might say that no, these shadows are wrong. Maybe they were supposed to be more on the left, because when the sun comes on the right, the shadows can be only. I do understand that, but in my case, I'm not an expert in drawing, but I'm just drawing to communicate a message or to help other people to understand programming, and also in an interesting way. So as you can see that this part is a bit darker. This is coding. Remember, we are not drawing here. In fact, we are coding, but we are coding artistically. Interesting. Artistic coding. Okay, this is my first dark shade, and then I'm going to do my other dark shade here in this part. And then from then we are going to look at this diagram and see what difference does these dark shading, that the shades make. Are they going to give us the illusion that maybe there is too much light on a certain area or less light in a certain area, or it's not going to? Let's see. Okay, here it must be a little bit strong, and then it needs to be lighter as time goes by. As I move away, it needs to be lighter, but it must be there. But it must be lighter. Okay. Okay, can you tell, can you start to see if now the diagram is starting to get life and it's looking different? So guys, I'm Matthew Msingati, the designer and developer. If you feel like this video has added value into your overall understanding of design, pattern, and programming and software architecture and engineering things, please do me a favor. Please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to finish my shading a little bit. And for me guys, that is this. Remember, this is art, this is freehand drawing, so it doesn't have to look in a certain way. So guys, this is coding. Now we are busy with coding here. As you can see, that coding gives it that final look, finishing and touch. Stick with me, I will make you famous. I will take you places to see different faces. Otherwise, for me, Hlazom Singati, the designer and developer, that's all I wanted to communicate to you. Please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button so that I can be closer to reaching my goal, which is 1,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the next one.